Welcome to the Orgasmic Birth Podcast. Before we dive in today's episode, I have something special to share with you. Are you ready to prepare for birth in a way that celebrates pleasure, connection, and empowerment? Our Pleasurable Birth Essentials course is designed for expectant parents who want to experience childbirth as an intimate, joyful, and yes, even orgasmic event. Imagine giving birth with confidence, tapping into your body's natural abilities, and creating the possibility for your own orgasmic birth. Our course will guide you through the techniques, tools, and mindset shifts to help you embrace birth as a transformative and pleasurable experience. If you're ready to take the next step toward a more empowering birth, visit our website, orgasmicbirth.com, click on For Parents, and learn more and join our Pleasurable Birth Essentials course today. Now, let's get started with our show. Hi, I'm Deborah Pascali Bonaro, Director of Orgasmic Birth and host of the Orgasmic Birth Podcast. My guest today is a dear and longtime friend who's joining us to talk about the power of rest to help women give birth and dare to claim their power. Karen Brody is the author of the book Daring to Rest, Claim Your Power with Yoga Nidra Meditation. Over the past 17 years, she has taught thousands of women to become rested and trained hundreds of women globally to become rest coaches through Daring to Rest method and the Rested Path framework. Host of the Daring to Rest podcast, Karen loves talking about the landscape of rest and how rest transforms how we lead in our homes, our work, relationships, and so much more. In addition to her book, Daring to Rest, she has written 2 books and a critically acclaimed play, Birth, that was translated into 4 languages and raised over $1 million globally to improve maternity care. Karen is the mother of 2 boys, now young adults, who were raised on rest. And Karen, I can't tell you what a pleasure and honor it is to have you join me today. We go back, as I said, a long way. And I remember your play Birth just kind of bubbling up and beginning, and even had an opportunity to be with you when you took it to Broadway. And I got to play the doula, which was so wonderful for me. So thank you for being here. Truly, just lots of love.
Lots of love. Yes. I'm so happy to be here, Deborah. Thank you for inviting me. Just so happy to be present with you.
So I know, and we said in your intro that you have 2 young adults now, but I know that so much changes when we give birth, and birth is a day we never forget. It's a powerful part of our lives, and often is what leads us to other things that you've done. Can you take us back some years thinking about those pregnancies and births and share a little bit of what they were like for you?
Absolutely. Wow. I love sharing these stories. And also, I love sharing them to my boys on their birthday every year. I always do an audio telling them their birth story.
I love it. What a special tradition.
Yeah. Yeah. I wake up in the morning and I tell them their birth story, and they don't live near me anymore. So I usually do it on WhatsApp. One is in London, one is in Spain. So they're 25 and 23. And I just, you know, record the audio and send it off to them. And then I usually speak with them later, but I always tell them their birth story. It's a special story. And I will say that, that my first son, when he was born, I was I was a super, like, I'd gone from being not earthy crunchy in the least to really having to find my center at a pretty early age in my 20s, because after my father passed, I began having pretty severe panic attacks. So when I had my son, I was really at a place where I had done a lot of inner work on myself, and I knew, and actually I knew almost, I found like I was doing a lot of inner work, and I went into some food cooperative once, and there was a midwife speaking there, and I just heard her speak about home birth, and I just went, oh, that's what I'm going to do. And then we happened to have moved out of New York and we moved to Arkansas. And I thought, how am I going to find midwives in Arkansas? And 25 years ago, you didn't go on the internet to find a midwife.
That's right.
So I went into our local health food store. It was called Beans, Grains, and Things. And I literally like looked at pamphlets that were sitting there, and there was a midwifery practice in Little Rock, Arkansas. And that's how I found actually Ida Dara, who's very well known in the world of midwives, and Mary Alexander. And there was also like it was 3 midwives that were there in that practice, and they became like family to me. And just, I was in touch with my body enough to know I didn't want the medical paradigm. And I really knew that once I heard about this home birth thing that I never heard about in my life. And I just said, this is what I want. And I was very clear. But obviously, like choosing a home birth is also a road of self-discovery. There are twists and turns. I didn't, in the state of Arkansas, you had to have your baby at 42 weeks, or else you needed to go be seen by a doctor. Every state's different, but so I ended up getting induced by an acupuncturist at about 41 and a half weeks, right before the 42 weeks. Um, and then and when I say induced, she put some needles that she said will start contractions, and they did. And so then I went into my labor, and it's so funny. I remember really clearly that morning, I remember thinking, oh, okay, I feel the contractions. And I told the midwives, and at that time, and it's really kind of unusual for all 3 midwives came over to our house. And
Wow.
yeah, I know. All 3 midwives came over. They were like, um, you're doing really well, Karen. But you know, I thought I'm going to give birth like right after the contractions start immediately. And Tim was baking bread, my husband, Tim, and the midwives were sitting outside. It was a really hot day in Arkansas, and we were outside. And I said to them as we were sitting there eating this fresh baked bread, I was like, "Oh, am I going to have the baby in like an hour?" They're like, "If you're talking, you're not going to have a baby."
I love that, right?
And so then I began to get quiet. Then I began to go inward, and I mean really inward. And I walked around the house with our dog. Our Labrador was just kind of almost like my doula, like kind of pacing, going around with me step by step. The midwives were there just checking in, holding space. And when it was time to push, I thought, oh, it's going to be 5 minutes. No, the pushing took 2 hours of pushing. And it was like this experience that I'd never had in my life, where I didn't grow up with really strong women in sisterhood. And it's almost going to bring me to tears that the midwives were just there. And it was this, a true guru sees the guru within you, right? Like
That's right.
yeah, a true guru reminds you that you are the guru, that you are the person with the power, that you can claim at any moment you choose to claim that power. And I just remember looking out at these women who looked back at me, not concerned, just like, you've got the power, like claim it. And I'm telling you, 2 hours of pushing, there's a lot of doubt that can come up with like, okay, what's going on? But everyone who was in that room was so deliciously present for me in a way that I had never experienced in my life. And I knew I could do it intellectually before the birth, but during the birth, I really needed those eyes that also knew I could do it as well. And so I pushed my son out, in our bedroom in Arkansas, in a log cabin, log house in Arkansas. And it was really empowering. And I remember just afterwards, they had a little herbal bath, and I was just laying there in the bath with my son, who was startling a lot. My son startled a lot. And I didn't know what that was, but there were women there who reassured me, who told me, this is normal. This, just things that, like, especially as a first time mom, it felt like I had three mothers in the room. Like really devoted, unconditional mothering that many of us, and I know I certainly didn't feel I always had. And so that was just, honestly, I understand why people want to give birth like 20 times. If you get something like that, like, you just want to go back for more.
Yes, I love that. And how beautiful. Like I could see and feel, I can feel kind of the oxytocin of what that moment was like. And to have those midwives hold such powerful space for you to give birth to your son, but to also give birth to you and that power within you in such a beautiful way.
Yeah, I'll never forget that. That was a bliss body moment for sure. It was a real bliss body moment for me, which maybe we'll swing back to when we talk about rest, because I've been there again in this space of deep rest. But the midwives eventually left. We didn't want them to. They said, "Do you need anything?" We were like, "Can you
Move
stay
in.
forever?" Yeah, we had been practicing changing a diaper on a stuffed giraffe. We were like, now we've really got the baby, and it's a boy, and they could spray up into your face and the whole thing. But but it was very beautiful because they made us breakfast, or it was evening. They made us you know uh an afternoon evening meal, and then they left us all cuddled up in bed together, and it was just like, why do we not honor these moments that are absolutely transformational and thresholds and portals into our greatness, our goodness, our you know there's so much that doesn't feel right in the world often, but these moments of birth are when you realize that everything is right, everything's going to be okay. And I'm not saying, if you have a traumatic birth, that's a that's a whole different level of managing what transpires in that birth. But in the case of a natural birth like this, it just, I felt like I wanted everyone to have what I got, you know? And not necessarily at home. I want this available in hospitals for, the conscious cesareans where there's a presence and awareness. It's the presence. It's, to me, what I call now rest eyes, you know, this deep presence that's devotional. And it's just so delicious. And I had it when I had my second son as well, who was really born much more quickly. Like literally, my husband had a fever, and my son, who my oldest son had rotavirus, and I was holding him
Oh
over
no.
belly. He was vomiting into the to the toilet, and then my water breaks, you know, and it was a different birth. And at the same time, the presence that I had was just like the secret sauce. It was the secret sauce because the conditions weren't great. And my husband was like, "Are you sure your water broke? Do we really going to do this?" He has a fever, the whole thing. And my other son came very, very quickly. I thought I would labor in water a really long time, but I had to get out of that water because the water was too warm to birth him in water, because the baby was literally coming. So I had to kind of step out of the birthing tub because they would have cooled it down if we had time. And then I just pushed in the middle of my hallway and gave birth to our second son. And yeah, it was really magic. It was magic.
Yeah. I can hear it and feel it. And after your second birth, I know you started, where did you go from there? Where did that power and the lessons you learned and that wisdom, where did that start transitioning you to?
Well, I had been a community organizer in my 20s, and I'd also started writing in my late 20s, 30s about wellness. And then just everything came together after my births. I just was like, wait a minute. And I met a lot of moms who were giving birth, and I heard very different stories than mine, right? They weren't my stories necessarily. And I just thought, wow, we know the statistics about birth, we know all of these facts, but we haven't really put mothers center stage. And I wanted the voices of mothers to be center stage, to tell their birth stories and to tell a variety of birth stories. And as a community organizer, as a writer, as someone who I feel committed to social change, changing the culture of birth, because I heard a lot of what Naomi Wolf in her book called, in Misconceptions, called ordinary bad birth experiences. And these were very highly educated women, low risk educated women. And I was really concerned, like, wait a minute, how could they not have this information to know that there are options out there, especially low risk, right? And high
Right.
risk changes your options. But I wanted to write a play, and I didn't know it was a play at first. I thought I was writing a book. I interviewed 118 women about their birth experience. I just started interviewing moms. In fact, they were calling me to interview them in some ways because I started interviewing a few moms. I put a little ad in Midwifery Today, which was like a newsletter at that time or something. And I just put a little ad to have you had a birth experience that you want to share. I was flooded with birth stories, like women contacting me, and then I would get on the phone with them and I'd record their birth story and as they told me their stories. 118. And once women started finding out I was doing this, I literally would be at a gathering that was nothing to do with birth, and like I'd have a woman pull me into the closet and literally tell me her birth story, and like no one has asked me,
Yeah.
how was it? No one wants to, because especially the stories that were really not positive in the sense of what we see in our society, what we call positive, but it was the day their child was born. And so they pulled me to the side and said, I need to tell this story. And though I felt really passionate about telling these stories, putting mothers center stage, and I thought I was writing a book until I laid down to rest and found this practice, yoga nidra, really by accident. I was going to take a bendy, stretchy yoga class at a yoga studio, trying to take off the postpartum weight when my boys were about 2 and 4. And then I just saw 25 women laying down, like with eye pillows and blankets, looking like they were having the best rest of their life. And I was like, what's that? The best nap of your life. I want that. I want what they got, you know? And that started my journey into rest, but also into writing a play called Birth. Because when I laid down, it became clear this is not a book, this is a play. And I wrote a play called Birth.
Yeah. And what a phenomenal play. You gave voice to all the women that had shared with you, but you gave voice to just all women that have given birth or are contemplating birth to be able to see and feel and hear the variations, the dynamics, and the possibilities. So your play, as we said in your intro, right, literally went around the world. Like, could you have ever imagined how listening to those stories just resonated in the entire world?
Well, through my rest practice, I really began to imagine that there are threads here. We may have different medical systems. We may have, different in every community. There's different options available, not available. But there's something about the human condition that is universal. And when people share their stories, it's really sharing their stories of the human condition. And that is universal. And I believe that we need to share the rested tones and the unrested tones, because the only way for us to thrive is to actually acknowledge everything in the system that's happening.
Yes. Yeah. And I know, Karen, you go on and you say that deep rest, because we've been talking about how that has played a role for you in Yoga Nidra. You say deep rest helps us know who we are, what we stand for, and what we will not stand for. So how did you begin to develop this practice, and what do you mean by that?
Well, I think that there's a lot in life that takes us away from our true nature. There's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of, just the to-do lists and just getting through life, right? And because we have been conditioned to be really obedient to grind culture, we somehow we think that's normal even, you know, and we get ostracized when we go against that, when we decide that we're not going to play a part in that. There's a huge sense of power that we receive when we radically lie down to rest. And a practice like Yoga Nidra in particular takes you to these different parts of ourselves. So we call them koshas. In yoga, it's called koshas. There are 5 koshas. And so you go from your physical body to there's an energy body, there's a wisdom body, there's a bliss body. And then there's like complete, some people might call it enlightenment, but you go to a place where you can hold opposites, which we're always holding in our lives. You can hold the tension of the opposites in ways that allow you to thrive, to find that still point in the middle. And Yoga Nidra is a practice that every time you lie down, you're basically pointed back to your true nature. You're pointed to me, I would say to the rested path, you know, to your point, you're literally like you get the instructions how to get on a rested path. They're downloaded to you. And so then we wake up and we're in real life, right? So we need support, we need rest friends, we need rest community to help us to stay on this rested path. But it is embedded into the practice of Yoga Nidra, which I found so useful. And I think what happens is you're so deeply in touch with your body, you begin to what Eve Ensler calls, and I work with this in our Daring to Rest Rested Path programs, like the revolution that lives inside your body. You get connected to that. And when you know the revolution that lives inside your body, because that's really about what you stand for. That's what you stand for. When you know what you stand for, then you can know what you don't stand for, and you can start to make those boundaries to be more on a rested path than off a rested path. And, I'm saying it in a very simplistic way. This is why we need community. We need support to actually stay on the rested path. And everyone's on and off a rested path. There's no perfectly rested person on the planet. I just want to say that, actually, perfection is a big piece of the way we stay in the rest mess. Honestly, it's a big reason because we are addicted to perfection. And this isn't about being a perfectly rested person, but when you're burnt out, when you're living a life that's not in alignment with what you stand for. And I think birth helps us, like in birth, it's just like zip, and this is where I think a lot of women, you have a great empowering birth experience, and then you have to go back to real life and you have to find that power in other places and pleasure, right? You have to find power and pleasure in everyday life. But in the birth experience, you've hit into those places of the bliss body. The bliss body, in a birth experience is basically the bliss body.
Yes.
You are in the terrain of bliss. And that's not perfection. That's just like sometimes this moment of like, uh, instead of being in your ego mind, you're more in a cosmic mind. You're more in that space where, we always feel separate from everything. Suddenly you feel connected to everything.
Yes.
And there's the pleasure, there's the bliss, there's the everything's going to be okay. If you've had trauma, you might only get to everything's going to be okay, like a little light in the tunnel that you see. And it's really powerful and it's transformative if you've touched it. And then it's like how to bring it into everyday life.
Everyday life. Yeah. I
Yeah,
so agree. Birth is such a portal, right? Of where you can access pieces that we don't access in life. But I want to come back because I think for those that are listening, can you even give a little description of what is Yoga Nidra? And also, how it can be really useful for people that are listening that are pregnant today in preparing for birth so that they have more of an opportunity to connect to the full experience.
absolutely. Yeah. So yoga nidra is a sleep-based, a transformational sleep-based practice. So it's not yoga we think of as asana, we think of as bendy, stretchy. This is just you lie down, listen to a guided voice, and do nothing. That's it. I was
I
like, that's the
love
kind
it.
of yoga. That's the kind of yoga I
Yes.
need. Yeah. If you practice yoga, it's when you're in shavasana at the end of
Yes.
yoga, where everyone goes, oh, I wish we could have stayed another 20 minutes just lying down. That's the integration that you get at the end of a bendy, stretchy asana yoga class. But this is actually all typically lying down. Though you can sit, you can even stand if you want to practice yoga nidra. And it takes you from a waking state to dreaming to deep sleep to a third state of consciousness that you don't reach when you are actually sleeping in conventional sleep. It's that place of like enlightenment, pointing you to your true nature. There's so much more to say here, but the gist of yoga nidra is that it is a state of consciousness. It's not the whole journey guides you into the state of yoga nidra. And yoga nidra is this profound, like womb-like place. Like it's literally like meeting the unconditional mother, where you don't need the midwives, although I love midwives, but in yoga nidra, the midwives are there. When you lie down, you are guided to the midwives who literally are reminding you that the power is within you, right? And here's what you stand for. And the power is within you each time you lie down. And in fact, quite a few women, speaking of pleasure, have told me they've had, not everybody, have had actual orgasms while going into the state of yoga nidra. And it's not surprising because it truly is an orgasmic experience. It is that moment in birth where it's like, I can't, I can, I can't, I can, I can't, I can't. And then suddenly you have to hold both that you're not sure you can, and you can, and you have to hold both to birth that baby out. In yoga
That's for
nidra,
sure.
yeah, it teaches you that every time you lie down, because in life we're always holding opposites. We always think we can, we can't, you're always in that tension for many things, many decisions that we have to make. And so yoga nidra is almost like it's a beautiful, peaceful, restful training ground to prepare us to wake up and do life really aligned with what we stand for. And so yeah, like to me, and for birthing women, right? So I began, that was where I first started guiding people in yoga nidra, pregnant women, postpartum
Ah,
women, yeah, and actually for quite a long time, people were sending me women who've had traumatic first births who were then pregnant, wanting a VBAC for their second birth. And so I did a lot of rest coaching with women, guiding them into yoga nidra, so that when they actually gave birth, some women in early labor can actually practice yoga nidra and to get it's very relaxing in the early stages of birth. In the late stages of birth, you need your focus. You need to literally birth that baby out. But it helped them so deeply to go in so much more centered, especially if you've had a traumatic first birth. It helped them to really believe in their power. And so I think to me, it's an essential, to me, I think every doula and midwife should be literally offering yoga nidra, because it's not only in the birth, for the birth, but postpartum, it's a lifesaver for women. Just the rest alone, the deep rest you feel. I mean, 45 minutes of yoga nidra feels like 3 hours of sleep in your body. So hello. I mean,
Right.
that's why I lied down for that first time. I was like, what? I like that. I need that as a mother.
That's
And then
right. Of two little ones for sure.
it'll transform your mothering. And what a legacy to leave your children, to be a rested mother, to be committed. And again, we're going to chuck perfect. We're going to throw that away because there's no perfectly rested person on the planet. And mothers have challenges to be rested. But if you're a woman making a commitment to be a rested mother, you are literally raising your children on rest. And and that alone is revolutionary, if you ask me.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I love Yoga Nidra. I love what you're offering now. I know I can hear kind of people thinking like, what's the commitment? How do I get started in a practice? And is this once a week? Is this every day? What do you usually recommend to people when they're beginning?
Well, I always say do what you can do, right? So, meaning practice as much as you can practice, meaning that I did once a week when my kids were in preschool, every Friday, and it changed my life. So don't dismiss like I have to have a daily practice. Don't say you have to have, 7 times a week. I did it literally on a Friday at noon. I practiced my yoga nidra once a week. So it's really about commitment, consistent commitment. So if it's once a week, I would say probably at the minimum once a week if you really want to see some kind of benefit. If you feel you want more and you can carve more, eventually when my kids got a little older and I could bring it in more into my home and I could train them that mommy's napping, this is my time, I began to do it before dinner, probably 4 or 5 times of the week because that was usually a time where I would lose my cool, like having to do dinner and then all the bedtime stories and the this and the that and the homework. And so I just practiced my yoga nidra. I was such a nicer mommy. The kids were begging me to do yoga nidra before. They were like, are you going to do your yoga nidra before dinner?
They knew where you were, right?
I mean, at first, the household's a little scrambled when you decide to start resting because it's like, what? We're not going to get you for 30 minutes. And then they go, oh, wait, please lie down. You're so much nicer. So yeah, it could be as little as 20 minutes. Usually it's 20 to 30-minute practice. Some people, there are 45-minute practices. I like to give myself now, my children are out of the house. I give myself a full hour because I like to journal afterwards. I really feel I'm in a very juicy place creatively. I mean, as I said, I wrote a play from Yoga Nidra. I feel like it really gets us juicy and creative. So I get a lot of ideas after Yoga Nidra. But I didn't do that when the kids were young. I did 20, 30 minutes and then I was up making dinner. That's
Yeah.
that's the real life of a mom. My husband traveled 3 to 5 months of the year. I was the only parent in the home those times. And we didn't live that close to relatives. So, this was like, I had to also live real life.
Yeah.
I believe we can do it. I used to do yoga nidra in my minivan picking up my son. I would drop him at his I would drop him at soccer practice. And he had soccer practice like twice a week, or sometimes 3 times a week. And I would always just literally drop him off. I go park the car, I'd lay the seat back, and that would be my little rest cave.
And I love that because I think a lot of parents can relate to, especially as the children grow, right? All the activities that you're running around. So to know that you can do yoga nidra anywhere, right? As long as you can, yeah, make that
Yeah,
commitment.
yeah,
So
yeah.
guide people, because I'm sure they're all saying, okay, can they work with you? Do you offer programs? Where can people find you, Karen? What's your suggestion to all our listeners how they could start Yoga Nidra?
Well, if you want to just start and have just a short rest time, so time to rest, I lead a 61 point body rotation. I call it the Yes to Rest gathering once a month, and it's totally free to come to. And if you can't come live, you can listen later because we always put it on our Facebook group page. So it's always available throughout the month for all women to rest. So that's totally free, coming once a month. Once a year in January, I always do a 40-day Daring to Rest program. So I guide women for 40 days in Yoga Nidra. And we don't meet daily, but we meet once a week. And you will, like, to me, that's really a signature program. That's my book is based on this 40-day program. And I still teach it once a year in January because I think it's the the best way to sort of really begin to get committed. It's hard to make a commitment to rest. It's hard. That's why I created community around it, because I knew how hard it was for me to say yes to rest, to dare to rest. It's daring. It's daring in our culture because we are a grind, focused culture. We are productivity obsessed. That's where people get praise. So it is very daring. And we're also busy. We're in a busy matrix, really caught in a busy matrix. So 40 days is sort of like this way you break the spell, the spell of grind culture, the spell. And you realize there's a mom that actually has trained with me. When she did the 40-day program, she was like, okay, I don't think I'll rest all 40 days because that's unrealistic. I have 3 kids. And then she was like, oh my gosh, after 40 days, she just kept on resting daily because she's like, it's medicine. Rest is medicine. So 40-day program is a way people can come in if they want to join. Also, if you want to train with Daring to Rest, we have the Daring to Rest leadership program. And next year, I teach as you said, becoming a yoga nidra facilitator. Again, I think every doula and midwife, like to me, I wish my doulas and my midwives that came to I wish they had something like that. That would have just, luckily I had done a lot of inner work, and luckily my birth was what it was. But it's to me, it should be essential. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Really, well, rest is essential, right? And
Yeah.
so daring to rest, I love how you put that out there. And I know your programs are so special. So where can people find you?
daringtorest.com, daringtorest.com/facilitator if you want to come into the facilitator training. And then when you go to daringtorest.com, you'll see it says rest with us, and you'll see the 40-day program is mentioned there.
Fantastic. And they'll also see on your website, right, the once a month that's free. Because I hope
Yes.
everyone at the very least come and enjoy a free session. Can they sign up on your website for that as well?
Yeah, daringtorest.com, right at the top of the page, it says join our monthly Yes to Rest gathering. And you click on that and then you just sign up. Yeah, it's
Okay.
totally free every month.
Fantastic. And I think I'm going to have to join you next month too. So, a good reminder for me talking to you today. And I thank you so much, Karen, for sharing your journey, your birth stories, and all that you're doing and bringing out into the world and inspiring all of us and inspiring me. It was so special to reconnect with you. So, thank you.
It's been amazing, Deborah. And I just want to say how much I admire your work in the world and just, connecting with you throughout these years. But you're holding this torch for pleasure, for orgasmic birth, for all of what can be in our world. The beauty of what, for people to really claim their wand, and really be in their power. And I really appreciate what you're doing in the world. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you to our listeners. Thank you for joining us today. We know it's very special that you choose to journey along with us. We'd love to hear your comments, feedback. Please rate and review our show because that'll help us reach more people. And we hope you'll join us next week on the next episode of the Orgasmic Birth Podcast. Thank you.